Johnson. Mr. Steil is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Gensler, for being here with us today. This summer, I asked Director Girding about the SEC staff, about whether or not the SEC staff conducted legal analysis of shareholder proposals. And Director Girding seemed to have a tough time answering the question, and I walked away understanding that the SEC does not conduct much, if any, legal analysis of a shareholder proposal. That's troubling to me, because I think that would be one of the roles of the SEC, in particular, following the SEC's review of the particular Traveler shareholder proposal, the racial equity audit, that I think could have driven that company to be forced to engage in illegal behavior. And so asking you if you could give me a clear answer, does the SEC conduct legal analysis of shareholder proposals?
In preparation for the hearing, I watched your testimony between Director Girding and you. I think it is part, and I don't do this on a day-to-day basis, but I think when staff looks at, sometimes companies come in and ask the staff's opinion on things. Staff does look at, one of the components they look at is the legal.
So not every time. So when you say sometime, I think it's just important for us to understand whether or not we should make that explicit. I think it should be explicit. So sometimes the SEC looks at whether or not shareholder proposal is legal, and sometimes they do not review whether or not shareholder proposal is legal.
As I understand it, I believe it's one of the components of the review, but I'd be glad to have staff work with your staff and get you the details of the.
I'd like you to. I mean, the fact that you reviewed it in advance of this committee hearing, which I appreciate the amount of time and effort you put into preparing for a hearing, but you don't have an answer specifically whether or not the SEC conducts a legal review, not even a legal opinion, but just a legal review on each shareholder proposal, to me, would be a baseline review for the SEC.
I'm here saying I believe that it's part of the review, but I don't know if it's on every shareholder proposal, because it depends on the nature of the shareholder proposal, of course.
Okay. I'd like you to come back with that information about the process in which you review shareholder proposals in light of probably two key things. One is we brought in the two largest proxy advisors, ISS and Glass Lewis, and they specifically said on the record that they do not conduct a review for legality. They instead rely upon the SEC's analysis for legality. On the record in this committee room, your director and now you kind of go back and forth as to how you conduct that legal review. I think it's really important for us as policymakers to understand whether or not anyone, the SEC or proxy advisors, which may not be under, we can get to how they're registered with the SEC, but who's conducting the legal review, because it has a significant impact on companies. And if we build upon that and we look at the Staff Legal Bulletin 14L, we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of shareholder proposals. We're seeing more focused on social and political concerns. And I go back and look at the underlying language of that legal staff bulletin, saying that they would consider whether or not a proposal concerns a matter of widespread public debate. Can you define widespread public debate?
I think, sir, that it's really, and this goes back all the way back to the 1960s, of shareholder proposals, that investors can make shareholder proposals on the term you used, on wide scale.
Widespread public debate is your legal staff bulletin.
And that goes back many decades.
But can you define it? I understand there's a history to it, I understand, but the legal staff bulletin came out under your chairmanship. Can you define the term widespread public debate?
And the staff does, when asked, give their informal advice, but ultimately it's between the company and the investors.
Understood, but don't you think that's of concern that you can't define what widespread public debate is when your staff bulletin says that that's a point of review for shareholder proposals? I'll offer you that it concerns me, in particular in light of the dramatic increase in the number of shareholder proposals we've seen that are based on social and political objectives rather than governance of the nation's largest companies. See if I can get this in really briefly. We've discussed your use of email. You've had an aggressive enforcement campaign on off-channel communications for financial firms. Have you used anything other than official SEC resources to conduct your government business?
No, I comply with the laws, but I also, if somebody sends me an email, then I forward it into the SEC.
Thank you very much for your time. I yield back.